In this podcast episode, Michael Shellenberger, a journalist and author, discusses the recently released WPATH files, which shed light on the mistreatment of individuals experiencing gender distress by the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. The organization presented itself as a professional body grounded in science and evidence, but the internal files revealed a lack of professionalism, evidence-based practices, and informed consent. WPATH falsely claimed to be a professional association, using the guise of advocating for an oppressed group to avoid scrutiny. This allowed them to push radical interventions such as puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries on individuals as young as 13 years old. The American Psychological Association, American Medical Association, and other medical organizations supported WPATH, failing to question their practices and falling for the narrative of helping an oppressed group. The term gender distress was used to describe individuals experiencing confusion about their gender identity. However, this confusion is often indistinguishable from generalized negative emotions like anxiety and depression. The misdiagnosis of gender dysphoria led to unnecessary and harmful interventions, ignoring the minimal necessary approach recommended by experts like Ken Zucker. The push for extreme surgical and hormonal interventions was driven by profit, with projections showing significant growth in the trans industry. Surgeons were enticed by the profitability of performing irreversible surgeries on vulnerable individuals. The lack of follow-up care and responsibility further highlighted the sadistic nature of these interventions. Despite mounting evidence of mistreatment and malpractice, many individuals, including liberals and progressives, were in denial or hesitant to acknowledge the severity of the situation. The shock and horror of the mistreatment, coupled with the disbelief that trusted institutions could be complicit, created a barrier to accepting the reality of the situation. The reluctance to confront the truth and the fear of being labeled conspiratorial or right-wing hindered efforts to address the systemic issues. The release of the WPATH files prompted action, with Britain's National Health Service banning puberty blockers in all clinics. The Times of London condemned the mistreatment as quack medicine, signaling a shift in awareness and a call for further action to address the widespread mistreatment. The need to hold accountable the medical associations, practitioners, and institutions involved in perpetuating this mistreatment is crucial to prevent further harm and ensure ethical and evidence-based care for individuals experiencing gender distress. The conversation delves into the LGBTQ+ movement and its evolution, particularly in relation to the acceptance of homosexuality and the expansion of the concept of family to include same-sex couples. Shellenberger points out the perversion of the movement when it comes to transgender issues, highlighting the harm being done to individuals, especially children, in the name of gender identity politics. He discusses the role of narcissism and psychopathy in driving certain individuals to push for extreme measures like puberty blockers and gender reassignment surgeries. The discussion also touches on the concept of the devouring mother, where maternal instincts are taken to an extreme, leading to overprotection and interference in the development of children. Shellenberger connects this idea to the current political landscape, suggesting that childless women in positions of power may exhibit similar behaviors, infantilizing society and labeling any opposition as predatory. He warns of the dangers of women in power exhibiting psychopathic and narcissistic tendencies, leading to harmful policies and decisions. Shellenberger highlights the nihilistic undertones in the current gender identity politics, where the rejection of reality and the pursuit of immediate pleasure and power over others' bodies lead to a destructive path. He criticizes the medical professionals and parents who are complicit in sterilizing children and denying them their natural development, equating it to a form of nihilism that negates life and the natural order of things. Shellenberger brings up the concept of nihilism and resentment, stating that nihilism is a step towards resentment, which he considers a cardinal sin. He explains how power and hedonism are intertwined, with power being used to gratify hedonistic desires, especially when those desires are harmful in the long run. The conversation then shifts towards totalitarianism, with Peterson highlighting the role of narcissists and psychopaths in taking over major institutions to exert power and control. Shellenberger emphasizes the importance of describing the psychopathologies of leaders and challenging them to address the issues at hand. They discuss the need for institutional change and the necessity of holding individuals accountable for their actions, particularly in cases where minors are being transitioned without proper consent. As they explore the collapse of the secular experiment, Peterson argues that the secular approach has failed due to its reliance on raw empiricism and lack of a value hierarchy. He suggests that the monotheistic hypothesis, which posits a unification of values towards a higher purpose, offers a more compelling narrative. Shellenberger raises the question of how to promote a life-affirming, pro-human vision in a secular society, especially when dealing with issues related to gender identity and societal values. The conversation delves into the role of sacrifice in community building, with Peterson advocating for voluntary self-sacrifice as the basis for a harmonious society. He contrasts this with the misuse of power and manipulation seen in certain societal structures, highlighting the importance of distinguishing between sacrificial acts that benefit the community versus those that serve individual desires. Shellenberger questions the difference between genuine sacrifice for the greater good and self-serving sacrifices that harm others, using the example of individuals who prioritize their own desires over the well-being of their children. The discussion touches on the concept of Luciferian sacrifice, where individuals prioritize their own pride and power over the needs of others, leading to destructive consequences. They discuss the idea that true courage and integrity come from being willing to make sacrifices for a greater cause. They emphasize the importance of taking on challenges and facing adversity in order to uphold one's values and principles. Shellenberger continues by discussing his initial resistance to delving into dark and disturbing topics. He mentions how he was hesitant to confront certain issues, but eventually felt compelled to do so after receiving files from someone that he believed needed to be brought to light. This led him to uncover a cult-like organization involved in child sacrifice and castration, which he describes as a dangerous and violent group. Despite the risks involved in exposing such a group, Shellenberger expresses a sense of duty and responsibility to confront these dark truths. He acknowledges the personal security risks he faces, but emphasizes that he cannot live with himself if he does not take action. He views it as a moral imperative to stand up against such evil forces, even if it means putting himself in danger. The discussion delves into the role of religion and spirituality in shaping moral values and guiding human behavior. Peterson and Shellenberger explore the idea that religious traditions provide a framework for understanding the nature of good and evil, as well as the importance of faith and sacrifice in confronting darkness. They touch on the concept of a higher power or divine unity that underpins moral values and ethical principles. As the conversation comes to a close, the importance of resilience and optimism in the face of challenges is highlighted. Shellenberger expresses his belief that overcoming totalitarianism and evil requires a combination of courage, determination, and faith in the possibility of positive change. He remains hopeful that by confronting darkness and standing up for truth, it is possible to create a better future for society.